Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Before we begin, please subscribe and support the channel. If you have any scary stories, leave them in the comments. I may feature them in a future video. Also, let me know where you're watching from. It's amazing to see people from all around the world here. Now enjoy the story. I need to write this down. I need to get it out of my head and into the world because I feel like I'm going crazy and because I need to warn people. I'm an experienced hiker. I'm not one of those weekend warriors who sticks to the paved, well-marked trails. I like the deep woods, the places where you can walk for a whole day and not see another soul. I had a long weekend, so I decided to tackle a remote trail in a state forest a few hours from my home. My plan was simple. Hike in about 5 or 6 miles, find a good spot, camp for the night and hike out the next day. Standard stuff. The hike in was beautiful. The air was crisp. The sky was a brilliant cloudless blue, and the late autumn sun cast long golden shafts of light through the canopy. The only sounds were the crunch of my boots on the fallen leaves, the chatter of a distant sparrows, and the wind whispering through the trees. This is why I do it. This feeling of absolute peace, of being completely disconnected from the noise of the world. After a few hours of steady hiking, I started looking for a place to make camp. I was looking for the usual, a relatively flat spot, not too close to the trail, preferably with access to a water source. And then I found it. It wasn't just a good spot, it was a perfect spot. Unnaturally perfect. I stepped off the main trail, pushing through a thicket of ferns, and found myself in a clearing I can only describe as idyllic. It was a perfect circle, maybe 40 feet in diameter. The ground was covered in a carpet of short, soft, vibrant green grass that looked more like a meticulously manicured lawn than a patch of wild forest floor. And the trees formed a perfect, unbroken ring around the clearing. Tall, ancient oaks and pines stood shoulder to shoulder, their branches interlocking overhead like some kind of a dome, leaving this single, perfect circle of green open to the sky. It was like something out of a fairy tale. A small, rational part of my brain registered how strange it was. Clearings in dense forests are rarely so symmetrical. The grass shouldn't be so uniform, so soft. But the overwhelming feeling was one of discovery, of incredible luck. It felt safe, protected. The circle of trees felt like a natural fence, a private room gifted to me by the forest itself. I dismissed my unease as my city dweller's cynicism. I had found the jackpot of campsites. I dropped my pack with a contented sigh and set to work. The tent went up easily, the stakes sinking into the soft earth with a satisfying thump. I gathered some fallen branches from just outside the clearing and built a small, neat fire pit in the center. Soon a cheerful little fire was crackling away, warding off the evening chill. I cooked a simple meal of dehydrated chili and sat on my log, watching the flames dance as the sun set, painting the sky above the circle of trees in hues of orange and purple. This, I thought to myself, is perfect. This is what it's all about. As true darkness fell, the forest changed as it always does. The familiar woods of the day became a strange place of shadows and unseen movements. But I was snug in my little circle of light and warmth. I felt completely secure. After cleaning up my cook set, I doused the fire thoroughly, making sure every last ember was out, and crawled into my tent. I zipped up the flap, settled into my sleeping bag, and tried to sleep. And that's when the perfection started to unravel. It began with a feeling, a strange sensation from the ground beneath me. It was a faint, almost imperceptible movement directly under my sleeping bag. It felt like insects, a whole lot of them moving around just under the tent floor. A low-grade, creepy-crawly feeling. I tried to ignore it. I'm in the woods after all. There are bugs. I pulled my sleeping bag tighter around me and closed my eyes, focusing on the gentle sounds of the night. But I couldn't sleep. The feeling persisted, a constant, subtle, wriggling sensation against my back. It wasn't painful. It was just Wrong. Then the noises started. They came from outside the tent, from the ring of trees surrounding the clearing. A soft snap of a twig, the dry rustle of leaves. At first I assumed it was just an animal, a deer, maybe a raccoon, but the sounds were too regular. Snap, rustle, snap. They seemed to be moving slowly around the perimeter of the clearing, like someone is moving around me in the darkness. My heart started to beat a little faster. I lay there perfectly still, my ears straining in the darkness. And then I saw the shadows. My tent is made of a thin, light-colored nylon. The moon was bright, and it cast eerie, dancing shadows of the tree branches onto the tent walls. I watched them, trying to calm my racing mind. It's just the wind, I told myself. The wind is making the branches move, but there was no wind. The air was dead still, yet the shadows on my tent walls were moving, not just swaying, but actively, deliberately shifting. They were long, thin, finger-like shadows, and they were stroking the outside of my tent. I could see them sliding up the walls, tracing the seams, like curious, probing fingers. I sat bolt upright, my breath caught in my throat. I grabbed my powerful flashlight from the mesh pocket beside me. My hand was shaking. I flicked it on, pointing the bright white beam at the tent wall. The shadow vanished in the glare. I swept the beam around the inside of the tent. Nothing. Just me, my gear, and my hammering heart. I turned the light off. The shadow fingers returned, caressing the thin fabric. I was terrified now. The feeling from the ground had intensified. It wasn't just a vague wriggling anymore. It was faster, more deliberate. It felt like 1,000 tiny needles tapping against the floor of the tent from underneath. I fumbled for the flashlight again, my hands slick with sweat, and pointed the beam down at the tent floor beside my sleeping bag. And I saw it. The grass had come through. Dozens of thin, blade-like shoots of the soft green grass had pierced the thick nylon floor of my tent. They were sticking up, maybe half an inch, like a patch of freshly sprouted lawn. But that wasn't the worst part. They were moving. They were swaying back and forth in perfect, horrifying unison. Swish, swish, swish. A tiny, hypnotic, rhythmic motion. They weren't just blades of grass. They were something else. Cilia, teeth, feelers. They were testing the air inside my tent. They were trying to find me. I screamed, then scrambled for the zipper of the tent door, my fingers feeling like useless, clumsy sausages. The sound of the zipper was obscenely loud in the silence. I burst out of the tent and stumbled to my feet in the center of the clearing, whipping the beam of my flashlight around wildly. The clearing was empty. The circle of trees stood silent and still. For a moment, a sliver of hope, of denial, cut through my panic. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe I had finally lost it. Then I turned the flashlight back on my tent, and the world fell out from under me. The tree branches weren't coming from the trees. They were coming from the ground. Dozens of thick, dark root-like tendrils, the color of wet earth, had erupted from the soft green grass of the clearing. They were wrapped around my tent, constricting it, squeezing it like a giant boa constrictor. The sleek dome of my tent was misshapen, buckled inwards under the pressure. The roots were fibrous and sinewy, and I could swear I saw them pulsing with a slow, rhythmic beat, like a network of dark veins. They were pulling the tent downwards into the soft earth, which seemed to be yielding, sinking. It looked like my tent was being eaten, digested. And in that moment of absolute soul-shattering horror, I understood. I didn't think. I didn't grab my pack. I didn't try to save my expensive gear. My phone, my wallet, they were all in the tent. A tent that was currently being swallowed by the ground. The only thing I had was the flashlight in my hand and the clothes on my back. I ran. I ran for the gap in the trees that led back to the trail, my feet pounding on the soft, living earth. I felt a strange, sucking sensation with every step, as if the ground itself was trying to hold me back. I crashed through the ferns and onto the hard-packed dirt of the trail, and I didn't stop. The run through the forest was a blur of pure animal panic. The beam of my flashlight bounced and jittered, illuminating a chaotic, terrifying slideshow of dark tree trunks, twisted roots, and gaping black shadows. Every rustle of leaves was the creature, its tendrils slithering after me. Every shadow was its gaping maw. I ran until my lungs felt like they were on fire, until my legs were jelly, until I was sobbing and gasping for air. After what felt like an eternity, I saw it. A glint of reflected light through the trees. My car. The sight of that familiar man-made object was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. I burst out of the woods and into the small gravel parking area, fumbling in my pocket for the spare key I always keep there. My hands were shaking so violently it took me 3 tries to get it into the lock. I threw myself into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and locked it. I sat there for a moment, my chest heaving, listening to the sound of my own ragged breathing. I jammed the key in the ignition and the engine roared to life, a beautiful, beautiful sound of civilization and escape. I didn't look back. I drove all night, the adrenaline coursing through my veins, not stopping until the sun was up and I was hundreds of miles away. I'm safe now, I guess. I'm in a cheap motel room. But I'm not okay. I close my eyes and I see it. The wiggling grass, the pulsing dark roots, the way my tent buckled and sank into the earth. I think the clearing wasn't a clearing. It was a thing, a living thing. The soft grass wasn't grass. It was a lure, the soft lining of a mouth. The perfect circle of trees wasn't a protective fence. It was the rim of the jaw, and I had willingly, happily set up my camp on its tongue. This isn't just a story. It's a memory, a stain on time from a place I sometimes wish to forget. It started like any other late August trip into the Blackwood National Forest. My sister Chloe and our friends Liam and Maya, we were experienced hikers, not thrill seekers, just looking for that perfect spot, miles from cell service, where the stars truly drowned out the artificial light of civilization. Our target was the Whispering Falls, a legend of a place where the wind supposedly carried ancient voices through the rock formations. A bit cheesy maybe, but we were young and romantic enough to buy into it. The first 2 days were idyllic, sun-dappled paths, the scent of pine and damp earth, the rhythmic crunch of boots on fallen leaves. We'd found a clearing near a small, gurgling stream far off the main trails and set up our tents. It was perfect. We cooked over a small fire, swapped stories, and watched the meteor showers paint streaks across the inky sky. Liam, ever the pragmatic one, even commented, "See? No ancient spirits, just crickets and bad jokes." We laughed, agreeing. The woods felt peaceful, ancient, but benign. Then came the 3rd night. The change was subtle at first. A shift in the air, a drop in temperature that felt unnatural even for late summer. The crickets, which had been a constant chorus, slowly fell silent one by one until the quiet pressed in on us like a physical weight. Even the wind, usually a gentle sigh through the canopy, seemed to hold its breath. Chloe was the first to notice something truly amiss. "Did you guys hear that?" she whispered, peering out of the tent flap into the moonless night. Like a dragging sound, and then a thump. We listened. Nothing. Liam, already half asleep, mumbled, "Just an animal, Chloe. Probably a deer." But then it came again. Grab, thud. Not far, maybe 100 yards or so, deeper in the tree line. It sounded heavy, deliberate, and undeniably repetitive. Too rhythmic for a deer. Too slow for anything running. We unzipped our tents, huddling together around the dying embers of our fire. Maya clutched Liam's arm. "That's not normal," she breathed. "It sounds like someone dragging something huge. Or something dragging itself," I muttered, trying to sound brave, but my voice wavered. Then the whispering started. Not the gentle soughing of the wind or the distant murmur of the falls we'd yet to reach. This was different. Close. It was a dry, rasping sound, like dead leaves skittering across stone, but carrying the distinct cadence of speech, yet no words formed. Just sibilant, overlapping whispers rising and falling in an unnerving chorus. It was everywhere and nowhere, seeming to come from the very air around us. Liam, usually the brave one, swallowed hard. He pulled out his high-powered tactical flashlight, its beam a stark, cold spear against the overwhelming darkness. "I'm just gonna check it out," he said, trying for casual, but his hand trembled. "No." Chloe grabbed his arm. Don't go out there." But Liam, ever the protector, shook her off gently. "We need to know what it is. It's probably just a branch or a gust of wind playing tricks." He aimed the beam towards where the scraping had seemed loudest. The light cut through the oppressive blackness, illuminating a wall of ancient trees, their trunks thick and gnarled. For a moment there was nothing. Just the flickering shadows and the relentless, meaningless whispering that now seemed to intensify, to coil around us. Then he saw them. We all did, low to the ground, reflecting Liam's powerful beam with an unholy, cold intensity. A pair of eyes. Not animal eyes. Too large, too steady, too knowing. They were a deep, burning amber, set in something dark and indistinct. They didn't blink. They simply stared back, unwavering, from a height that suggested whatever they belonged to was either crouched or impossibly small, yet the presence felt immense. A collective gasp escaped us. The scraping sound started up again, closer now, accompanied by a new sound, a slow guttural gurgle, almost like liquid moving through a constricted throat, but deeper, echoing the cadence of the whispers. The eyes, unblinking, began to move, slowly, deliberately, as if whatever they belonged to was shifting its weight, preparing. Panic seized us. We scrambled back into our tents, fumbling with zippers, trying to create even a flimsy barrier against the palpable dread. But the sounds followed. The scraping seemed to be circling our camp, closer and closer, each thud vibrating through the very ground. The whispers were no longer just sibilant. They seemed to be forming into a mocking, insidious chorus, still without discernible words, but filled with malevolence. Liam was shaking, his flashlight beam dancing wildly through the trees, illuminating grotesque root systems and hanging moss that suddenly looked like skeletal fingers. "What is that?" he choked out. "We have to go," Maya whimpered, already trying to pack her sleeping bag with trembling hands. "Now." We tore down our tents in a frantic, desperate blur, abandoning anything that wasn't essential. Backpacks haphazardly thrown on, laces untied, hearts pounding like war drums against our ribs. The fire, thankfully, was almost out. We didn't dare stop to douse it properly. As we stumbled away from the clearing, running blindly into the deeper woods, the whispers became a howling gale in our ears, and the scraping turned into a frenzied tearing sound. We risked a glance back. That's when we saw it. The clearing, moments ago a refuge, was now a scene of impossible terror. The massive oak tree that had stood sentinel at the edge of our camp, its roots anchoring it for centuries, was no longer rooted. Its ancient, gnarled trunk was swaying, its immense roots, thick as human bodies, were wrenching themselves free from the earth with sickening cracks and groans. Soil, rocks, and smaller plants exploded upwards as it heaved itself free. The sound was like 1,000 bones breaking, mingled with a high-pitched, almost joyful shriek that somehow merged with the deeper guttural sound we'd heard earlier, and then, with a final earth-shattering crack, the tree stood free, not fallen, but standing. It began to move, slowly at first, its massive roots acting like monstrous splayed legs. The canopy, dense with leaves, thrashed wildly like a frantic, enraged head, and from its rough, ancient bark, around where those amber eyes had been, came that guttural sound again, deeper now, clearer, unmistakably laughter. A dry, woody cackle that echoed through the terrified silence of the forest, filled with ancient malice and glee. The tree was walking. It was coming for us. We ran then, truly ran, not just from something unseen, but from the impossible, from the very earth turned against us. The whispers followed, no longer vague, but sharp, distinct, like branches whipping past our ears. The thudding of roots on the ground vibrated through our feet. We didn't look back again, not until we burst out of the tree line and onto the main road hours later, battered, scratched, and utterly broken. To this day, none of us can explain it. We told our story, of course, but it was met with polite skepticism or worried glances at our wild eyes. The park rangers found our abandoned campsite, noted the strange, churned earth where a giant oak should have stood, but attributed it to a localized sinkhole or some geological anomaly. They never saw the laughter. They never felt the roots shake the ground. So yeah, if you hear anything tonight, any scraping, any whispering, maybe, just maybe, don't look. And for God's sake, if you see a tree moving, just run. I used to pitch my tent wherever. If it looked interesting, I was setting up camp. I kept a tent at the ready in my trunk. There's nothing exciting about a park. There's no adventure in that. I didn't camp out near someone's house or anything like that, but I have found myself in some precarious situations. The worst yet happened in East Tennessee. I was traveling back to campus after spring break. There's a spot of hills that I've always thought interesting. Between those hills runs a long valley. As I drive back and forth between Knoxville and Nashville, I always tell myself that I'm going to camp in that spot. But I never do it. I'm always pressed for time. I never leave in time, though. Class is always the next day. Lost in music, I started ruminating on how boring my life had become. To hell with it, I was going to do it. I didn't much care to do calculus at 8 in the morning anyway. I could afford to miss one day. I pulled over to the side of the interstate, got my tent and backpack, and started hiking downhill to the valley. It was still early afternoon. The sun was still high enough in the sky to illuminate my way. The vegetation was thick. There was no human-made trail, no way to easily traverse the terrain. As I hiked through the briars and whipping branches, I reminded myself to buy a machete for instances such as these. I found a perfect spot under a thicket of red cedars, with a nice flat area and no undergrowth. I pitched my tent and laid out my sleeping bag. I didn't carry much on these excursions. I had a backpack with some crackers, a knife, lighter, and a flashlight. It was usually a one-night affair, and I'm gone the next morning. I spent most of the day exploring, but on this occasion I was a little late. My main desire was to hike to the top of the largest hill to see the view and discover what was on the other side. It took me about an hour and a half to make it up the hill. There on the other side was a wide expanse of nothing but trees. It looked like a green shag carpet rolled out across the landscape. I noticed directly at the bottom of the hill was an old wooden shed. What an odd place for a shed. The sun was farther down, but I still had time to check it out. I descended down to the other side of the hill with a little haste. I wanted to make it back to my tent before it got too dark, but I couldn't pass up this opportunity. My curiosity piqued. I was excited for some adventure. I got to the shed, opened the door, and walked straight in without surveying the inside first. I felt the earth beneath my feet give way, my gut lifting up as if on a roller coaster, and then fell hard to the ground, breaking my tibia. The pain was excruciating. I rolled around in agony, feeling the dirt and rocky bottom. I looked up and realized I had fallen down into a deep hole, not so deep that I couldn't see the shed walls. The shed was only big enough to encompass and hide the hole. The hole seemed to be about 20 feet deep, no way to climb out and escape. There was still enough light to see up top, but down in the hole it was dark. We're dead. You know that, don't you? I was startled. Someone else was down in the hole with me. I grabbed my flashlight out of my backpack. There, on the other side of the hole, was a young woman. Her whole being, body, face, and clothes were filthy with dirt and grime. Her lips were dried up and cracked. You almost hit me. Watch where you're falling next time, she said with a weak chuckle. How long have you been here? I don't know. I'm in and out of consciousness. Sometimes I wake up and think I'm home in bed, then realize I'm in this damned hole. How did you get here? I was abducted. And you? I was camping and found this shed, she laughed. So you saw a creepy shed in the woods and went to see what was inside. Man, you're a dumb fuck. There's no way out of here. No, I've tried. Nothing we can do. I know you're hurt pretty bad. I heard your leg snap as you fell. Man, what a sound. I hate to say this, but I'm glad you're here, though. I was getting lonely. I don't mean I want you to go through what I've been through. I mean, I'm just glad you're not him. Well, might as well introduce myself since we're going to be spending a lot of time together. My name is Mary. She widened her eyes and tilted her head forward, trying to evoke a response. I'm Gary. My leg was bent awkwardly, but no bone was exposed. Even though there was just me and Mary in the hole, there were piles of clothing, a thrift store in the middle of the woods. I grabbed some blue jeans and a t-shirt. I tied it tight around my shin. I didn't know how to make a tourniquet, or even if I should. I just wanted to stabilize my leg the best I could. There was an uneasy silence. What do you talk about when you are trapped in a hole? Him, you said him. Is just the one guy? Yeah, but I don't know if I would call him a guy. What do you mean? You'll see. What do you mean? Does he come down into the hole? Yes, and he takes you out of the hole and does things to you. Experiments. Then that's our chance. That's our only chance, is to knock the shit out of this fucker and get out of here. He's not expecting me. He doesn't know I'm down here. I started formulating a plan. There were enough clothes that I could hide underneath, and I had my knife. Mary, I want you to move forward. I'll pack some clothes behind you. I'll be buried underneath with my knife. You lean back on that pile. You know, like you had made yourself a comfortable little bed or something. Okay, she nodded her head. When does he usually come? I don't know, but it's pretty regular. How does he get down here? He has a rope ladder. Is he big? Have you ever tried to fight him? To escape? No, he has some... She hesitated. Some kind of power. It freezes me. I can't move. I hear a ringing in my head and then I'm paralyzed. Don't let him see you. We'll know when he's approaching. There's always a humming sound and a clicking. I wasn't believing anything she was saying. She had been trapped in a dark hole for who knows how long. She was losing her mind, starved of vital nutrients. Her imagination had started to create a different reality for her, one that I was unwilling to participate in. I laid against the wall of the hole on my side. My broken leg was throbbing as it was laying on the floor with my other leg on top. I couldn't switch around, though. I had to be facing the side the hole he would be climbing down. Mary threw a bunch of the clothing on top of me, leaving my face exposed so that I could breathe and not get too hot. I held my knife up to my chest. It was the old-fashioned survival knife with a compass on the handle. I had long since lost the matches and string that came with the knife, tucked away in the hollow of the handle. But for my present purposes, the blade was, hopefully, all I needed. Mary leaned back against me. We waited. After a while, I heard a humming and a clicking. The thought ran through my head that maybe Mary wasn't crazy after all. He's coming. I know. Go ahead and cover my face. The humming subsided, but the clicking grew louder. I heard the door open. Then the unrolling of the rope ladder with the wooden rungs tapping out a rhythm as it fell to the floor of the hole. Mary started to whimper in fear. I heard the man make his way down, and then the thump of his feet as he jumped to the bottom. The hole lit up with a blue light. I felt Mary's body go limp, and then I felt her lifted up off of me. I slowly, quietly pushed away the shirt that was covering my face. The man had his back towards me with Mary slumped over his shoulder. He was about to climb up out of the hole. He wasn't that tall, but thick like a Neanderthal. He wore all black with a long-sleeved turtleneck shirt. He was bald, but the oddest thing was where the blue light was emanating from. What skin I could see on his head and his irregularly long hands was glowing blue. I was scared as hell. What was I about to tangle with? Yet I knew now more than ever this was our only chance. I let him climb a few rungs before I sprung out and hobbled as fast as I could to the other side of the hole. He didn't hear me. I know I had made too much noise, but he never reacted. I shoved my knife into his lower back. The clicking grew loud. I grabbed his shirt and yanked him down the ladder, pulling my knife out of his back and thrusting it in the back of his neck. Mary fell hard to the ground. He turned his head, revealing large black eyes devoid of pupils. He didn't have a nose. His mouth was huge, with mandibles projecting from each side. The mandibles fluttered angrily, clicking and humming, increasing in frequency. He, or it, pushed me to the ground, pulling my knife out of his neck and throwing it to the ground. It looked into my eyes, making a hypnotic contact that I could not shake. I heard a ringing in my head and my body went limp. I had no control over my limbs. I was frozen to the bottom of the hole, my plan unraveling. Everything was a haze. I was barely cognizant of my surroundings, so I don't know when or how Mary regained consciousness, but I could see her sneaking toward the knife. My vision was blurry. I was fighting not to pass out. I saw Mary get the knife and move quickly toward the being. She grabbed a handful of dirt and slung it at his head. He turned and she landed the knife in his face. He pivoted back toward me and I could see she had stabbed him directly in one of his eyes. Black and crimson fluid streamed down his face. I could feel my body again, slowly able to move my limbs. I got up as fast as my recovering body would allow and started towards the ladder. Go, Mary, go, go, go. Get the hell out of here! She went up first and I followed, pushing her in the rear as we went up. We were halfway when I felt him grab my broken leg. I shrieked. The pain was unbearable. I instinctively kicked with my other leg and landed a shot to his mouth, breaking off one of his mandibles. The creature fell back down into the hole. Mary and I made it out of the hole and quickly pulled up the ladder. The creature recovered from its fall. Realizing it was trapped, it tried frantically to climb up the wall. I was relieved to see that it didn't have any power of flight or levitation or some other weird alien power that would get him out of the hole. Mary and I watched as the blue shimmer of light banged against the walls, like a firefly stuck in a mason jar. There was nothing to do but leave it there and hope it starved to death. It took forever, but we finally made it to my car. Mary drove me to the nearest hospital. She called the police and told them that we had escaped from an assailant with long black hair and a big bushy beard. I don't know what else she could say. Who would believe the truth? She pushed the officials in a different direction from the shed, claiming that we had escaped from a house somewhere about 10 miles from the actual location. I suspected she knew more than what she was saying, or even more than what she had told me. Maybe she knew that the creature would no longer be there, that something would have come and retrieved him. I don't know. I do know that I never travel that way anymore, and I sure as hell don't ever go camping. Gaming is all the adventure I need.